Hello friends, welcome back for Bitcoin Technical Analysis. I'm your friend Rocky Outcrop, and I would be much obliged if you hit that like button and that subscribe button. I'd be really grateful. So big shout out to everybody who does that. Thank you so much. What will we be talking about in today's video? Well, you know, as I say, I've said this a few times in the past, the videos are relevant for more than one day, and as such, there's always an overlap between the previous videos and the daily videos, you know, like every time. So you're always welcome to go back and watch the previous ones because the technical analysis is still very much relevant, but I do try to keep it fresh all the time. Okay, May the 27th. So there's a few numbers there just at the start of this show notes that we can look at, really in terms of the sort of the horizontals, you could say, or just the price levels to be aware of, really. And towards the upside, they're 9.5, 9.8 and 10k. And the reason for that is really just like, you know, here at 9.5, here at 9.8, and here at 10k. You know, if the prices come up to the 9.5 area, first off, they could be breaking above this downward sloping trend line. And then, of course, you're looking towards the sort of 9.8 area to see if you're going to actually put in another high up here, kind of, and really to be the previous high is up at 10,000, and that's the next level to be aware of on the sort of the bullish case scenario. Then, of course, towards the sort of the bearish case scenario, the numbers to be aware of are 9, which is where this purple line is just here. 8.7, where we saw the prices come down as far as, you know, around about 8.7, 8.6, whatever, and then 8.5, you know, and 8.5 being the most important one. Just likewise how 10k is the most important one for the bullish case scenario, 8.5 currently is the equivalent towards the downside really for us in terms of importance and critical levels to be aware of. So there's a few things that we can talk about here as well. One of them was pointed out to me in the comment of yesterday's video, so thanks very much for that, by the way. But the 4-hour gap here on the CME charts has now been filled. So we'll take a look at that in a second. And but I want to point out while we're doing that, of course, that the price is still lower than 9,200 over here in the spot prices, you know, while that's happening. So we can take a look at that and see that in just a second or so. And another thing we can do whilst talking about gaps, of course, is the GBTC 4-hour gap up at 11, and we filled the other one. So let's just get that out of the way first off, shall we? And take a look over here. So the 4-hour time frame, and you can see that there was a gap in here, over there, the 22nd, 24th of May, all that, in this area there's a gap, and the prices then have subsequently come up and filled that gap. Now you'll notice there's this white line here, and I suppose I should talk about that now, since we're on the chart here, and that in doing this gap fill in this price action as it went up, we created another gap on the hourly chart down here at 8.9k. So that's something to be looking at, and in terms of the descending triangle type aspect of things, that would just simply be the beat going on and more of the same, should that actually be the case. And as you look back the way, you can see there's been several gaps in recent times on the hourly chart, but they've all been filled overall, you know, and they do tend to be filled, these hourly gaps. So this one here is, of course, of note for us. The most previous gap being to that was this one here, and it was filled straight after, and this one here was filled straight after, etc., etc., etc. You know, there's so that's currently the downside pressure aspect in terms of gaps, and the most you know closest one to us that remains unfilled in terms of the hourly chart at least. So, and then the GBTC chart, going over here to the 4-hour on this one. We have this circle drawn in here, and subsequently the prices have come up and filled in this gap. So that's not much of a surprise really overall, and it doesn't really go towards any particular side of any scenario in terms of bullish or bearish, because while we've been filling these gaps, as you can see here, it's not like it's come in and put in higher highs. Although there is another gap up here towards the 11,000 area, or not 11,000, oh my goodness, $11 on the GBTC prices. And as you can see, when this is currently at 10.6 and the spot prices are down there at 9, you can easily take off 1,500 in terms of this. So that 11 would bring the prices up to around about that 9,500 area. And we're aware that there'd be resistance in there, as we already covered in the show already. Okay, back over to the show notes then, and up to the 24-hour time frame, so I can actually read them. Yeah, so this show note thing is just something I've started recently. If you like it, let me know how you feel about this sort of thing. I don't do it on any of the other videos, but you know, whatever, it's all good. So right, so that's all of the sort of introductory side of things, and we can already move over to sort of wrapping up really in terms. And we haven't really looked at the price action all that much, but you know, it's still lower than 9.2. Just jumping over to the CME chart, you can see that we are slightly higher than this previous area here at 9,200, and this is going to be what I would like to see the CMEs in terms of the bullish case scenario close, you know, at least above this area here, just in terms of the meantime time frame perspective. But as we can see on the spot prices, that we're actually lower than that area, you know, the equivalent area, and you know, we've still not managed to make it even another high. In fact, this is just a continuation of the downward trend as it stands currently. So yes, what was I talking about there then? Sorry, excuse me for being brainless. Am I on the wrong chart? Yeah. Excuse me for being so brainless. These show notes and talking slowly are sort of putting me off my game, but you know, I hope it's more digestible information for everybody. So there's a 4-hour bullish divergence that we can look to. So while I was talking about this being a continuation of the downward trend, if we go over to, just for instance here, where it's slightly cleaner to look at for now, we'll be coming back here in a second to talk about the symmetrical triangle aspect of things. Yes, and I'll just go down to the 4-hour time frame, sure, while we're here, and point this little sort of thing out. So between this low and this low on the stochastics and the MACD, we saw the histogram on the MACD, we saw divergence between this low and this low, whereas this low here is lower than this one, and likewise this low is lower than this one. So there was that on the go, but the RSI didn't have that during that period of time. Then if we look between this low and the previous low, which isn't actually it's not an equal low, it's ever so slightly higher by just a couple of dollars really. But you know, looking between them, you can see that that there's that convergence, you could say, in terms of the bullish aspect. The RSI very much higher, you know, so it's not like a divergent thing, but we can see that it's trending towards the upside in the face of this almost equal low. So it's almost class B bullish divergence on the RSI at that point. And likewise for the other oscillators down below. So that's the most positive thing that we can say here, but of course looking towards where our horizontal line is on this chart at 9,200, and generally speaking these last highs over here, you know, you can see that while this is achieved, you know, while this bullish divergence here has resulted in some upward price action, that it isn't anything particularly, you know, special to write home about until such times as you're getting past these areas and looking towards that 9,500 area up above. Okie dokie. What's next? Let's see. So then, still not a higher high on the 4-hour. Yes, we spoke about that. Still just looks like a symmetrical triangle overall. So yeah, so we go back over to this chart where I have this drawn in at, you can see that really, you know, this still just looks like a symmetrical triangle in this sense. And of course, we could also discuss this as being a descending triangle and all sorts of like that as well, just depending on exactly, you know, where you're choosing to draw things in at. If I use the wicks off the bottom of this candle and the wicks here, and of course start it over here at this section on the 27th of April or so, going up the way, then it forms a symmetrical triangle. And we can look towards the top end, I suppose, there at 9,698. And should we be going up and doing these numbers that I spoke about here at the start, say 9,800, and we don't quite get there but go past 9,500, then you could think to yourself, well, hey, maybe that's just more of that symmetrical triangle playing out, or indeed the descending triangle. And what do I mean by descending triangle? Well, of course, this could also be considered a channel in the long run. Should the prices come up to here and back down to here thereafter, etc., etc., that could become a channel, which is why we drew that in the chart yesterday, just as an example. But if I draw this around here and make it into a descending triangle, as you can see now, then you know, lost my train of thought there. Then well, it's just you know, it's still just sort of kind of going along as expected really overall. So it still just looks like a symmetrical triangle, or indeed a descending triangle, depending on your particular perspective. Overall, not particularly important. Of course, descending triangles have the chance of breaking to the downside and all that sort of thing. You could look, by the way, towards things like whether or not on the 1 hour chart or whatever, there's other shapes on the go in the meantime, but I'll leave that up up for you guys to look at on in your own sort of free time, or indeed your work time, depending on how you consider this. For me, it's work. Just so you can get another idea about the perspective to have on this overall. Just leave that up, just leave that open really for now. Okie dokie. Now up to the show notes again. 24-hour time frame. Sorry about this being so sort of back and forth linear. I don't know. Maybe it still works out as being better. And we're making good progress here overall. So we may have filled the 4-hour gap on the CME, but did so making a 1-hour gap for the beat to go on. So just like I've been saying, really in terms of the shape of the descending triangles, symmetrical triangle, whatever, this consolidation effect that's on the go, that's all that's really that's all that's boiled out of this is being as being just the beat going on. And should this come back down to be filled again at some point in the future, then it'll just be more of the same. So we could look towards the 8,900 area as being a target. And of course, to bear in mind that when we spoke about the backwardation yesterday, where the prices were actually lower on the CMEs than they were on spot, we can see they've kind of gone back to how they normally are just now. The spot price is at 9,130, the CME price is at 9,230, and if that were to continue, and the prices came down to the 8,950 area, then you could be looking at 8,850 or so again, easily in terms of the spot prices for that to be a fill on that. And that's just that would just all be part of the same story in terms of the shape of this thing overall anyway. So it's nothing particularly unusual going on there. So I suppose then the last things that I could talk about really would be if I went up to the 21 to the weekly and showed you that we're above the 21 on the weekly chart, and over here let's just take everything off apart from the drawings, apart from the EMA, sorry, and we can see here that the 21 EMA and the 55 EMA, and I'm using 55, but you could use 50. It won't make a massive dramatic difference to this concept, as you can see. They're crossing over each other from time to time. You could also use 20, or 18. Just to make this point, it's all going to be more or less the same in terms of the look of it. There's it set to 20, and here we'll set it to 18, so you can get a look at that. Sorry, 18. So you can see that. Now I'm going to change this back to what I was using originally, 21 and 55. Because in my opinion, in my opinion only, it's slightly better, kind of tighter in terms of the seeing the trend move. And the 21 is when it's above the 55 in general, then on the weekly chart, the prices are going up. And when it starts sloping down the way towards the 55, then that's kind of maybe showing you the end of that trend. And then when it crosses over and goes below the 55, then sure, maybe you could imagine that having a bit of a follow through in terms of the price action thereafter. And equally, when it crosses back up again, we saw this upward movement in price, and then it started sloping down the way just here over here on the 23rd of September, and of course we've had this downward price action on the go since. Now overall we've had a bit of snaking around here in terms of the EMAs, and it dipped below it here with this recent price action on the 9th of March, 9th of March up to where we are now on the 27th of April. Bearing in mind this is the weekly chart, so that's why those dates are quite big. And now it's positioned again with a slight upward slope, and it's crossed up above the 55 EMA. So I suppose that's the most kind of bullish, longer, medium to long term type aspect that we could look at really on the charts right now, would be how this little cross has kind of happened. Now this isn't like a special super fantastic cross, but as you can see on the weekly chart, I've just demonstrated to an extent that this is kind of a useful thing to be bearing in mind. So of course, as we saw here, it crossed back fairly rapidly. It could cross back fairly rapidly again. Little things like a test off of the weekly and it's shown as support, and the price moving on up thereafter could be a good thing to see overall, and that could happen all the way down as far as 8,229 currently. And how does that look then on the CME chart? Now bear in mind that again, this is the weekly chart, so these will line up more or less, unlike when I look at the daily chart and I'm talking about the 50 and 200 simple and I convert them to 70 and 280 on the weekly chart, because a week's a week no matter what way you cut it, these more or less line up perfectly anyway. And as you can see then, it's the same sort of scenario. So will we see this continue to slope towards the upside, maybe have a retest of it along some points? We've had a retest of it already once here on the CMEs on the 11th of May week, the week there, and so Maybe we'll see that again. Maybe that was enough for that. Maybe this will turn into a bullish thing overall. But you can't start feeling like that until, and I'll just go back over here to wrap up on the 24-hour time frame and say, put the drawings back on so I can see my writing, and say until you're above, these numbers here. So that's why you can boil it right down to simple, sensible things like 9.5, 9.8, 10,000, 9,000, 8,700, 8,500, and of course, right now, this 9,000, the 9,000 area and the 9,200 area, kind of just between those two at the minute. If we go over to the BitMEX chart where I've got 9,200 drawn in there, and go over to the Bitstamp chart where I have 8,900 drawn in. Those are the kind of the areas that we're looking towards in general. And I suppose then the last thing that I can say is, as you can see, this white line is the monthly trend line, and we're currently back up above it once again. So if I go up to the monthly time frame, zoom right in so you can see, then the recent price action has carried it up to here. But it all in around this area is, nothing massively special until the prices are up at that 9,500 area and closing there, 9,000. Well, let's actually say that 9,350 and actually closing there. Then this is a lower high on the monthly chart and just more continuation of the downward monthly trend. Should we not see that happen, of course, we could get a close here and then continue to just go up and start, and do it next month. That could happen. But in terms of it being the 27th of May, April has September. So yeah, in terms of us having plenty of time, left in the month for us to, overall, like the few days is enough for the price action, as we've seen looking back over the last few days, is enough for the price action to move the couple $100 really that it would need to be either above or below that line, really, just up to the 30th of May there. So we'll see how it turns out before the 31st of May, sorry, before we get to before we get into June here, and how the monthly thing will close up. So that's kind of going to cover us for the next few days. Of course, as I say, I do these videos every day, so I hugely appreciate anybody who likes and subscribes, and that's everything. And you might be wondering a wee bit, if you're new to the channel, why I haven't said just a specific way the price is going and kind of laid it all out for you. And well, to be honest, if you give a man a fish, he can feed himself for a day. If you teach a man how to fish, then he'll go wild with it. And I'm just hoping that you all go wild with your fishing out there, really. And that's why I don't want to give you the exact answers to everything, or I never show my own trades and all the rest of it. I just think that causes FOMO and confusion in the market, and I actually think it's ethically wrong to do that, to be perfectly honest with you. But anyhow, I've given you enough information to run on with, and it should integrate fairly well with your own technical analysis. I hope you have a fantastic day. Share this video with a friend if you've got one that you think would like it, and I hope that you've been able to follow along fairly well. I've been trying to speak slower over the last wee while. Leave your comments down below, join the Discord, all that good stuff. I really appreciate everybody who just even watches, to be fair, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. I've been Rocky Outcrop. This has been a Bitcoin technical analysis video, and I really appreciate the time you spent. See you next time.